As the saying goes, when something is for free, it means that you are the product. And in the case of social media companies such as Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, in this particular case, your patterns, behaviors, likes and dislikes, and most crucially, our personal data is in many ways the product. And in the wrong hands, this is, of course, incredibly dangerous. We all remember the Cambridge Analytica scandal that rocked Facebook some years back. And now a similar scandal, and perhaps even more dangerous one, has come up in Twitter. According to whistleblower Peiter Zatko, the Indian government forced Twitter to hire what he calls agents of the Indian government, who then had access to the data of users who have been critical of the Modi regime. Now, this is particularly appalling when you consider that the Indian government's attitude towards dissent and towards critical voices. And in particular, if you recall, during the anti-CAA protests and the farmers' protests, there were a lot of people being incredibly critical of the Modi government online, and some of course, using anon IDs. So the idea of agents of the Indian government, of the Modi government, having access to the data of those dissenters, you can imagine creates major complications and raises major questions as to the security of data and also to Twitter's commitment to free speech. Now, when I say forced, according to the whistleblower, possibly a variety of threats were used, including and not limited to harm to existing Twitter employees working in India. Interestingly enough, Nigeria and Russia are also claimed to have adopted much the same tactics. And in Nigeria's case, they had banned Twitter earlier this year, or the end of last year, and only agreed to lift the ban if Twitter bowed to their conditions. And one of the conditions was the hiring of certain people who would then, it is assumed and alleged, would be able to keep an eye on dissenting voices in those respective countries. This isn't the first time this has happened. A few weeks ago, a jury in San Francisco in the United States found a former Twitter employee guilty of spying on the behalf of Saudi Arabia. He was said to have been recruited by Saudi officials to covertly give them access to personal information on Saudi dissidents. You may also recall that very recently, a Saudi national, lady whose name escapes me, was arrested allegedly for tweets critical of the Saudi government. It said in this particular case that 6,000 Twitter accounts of Saudi dissenters were violated, the personal information of whom was violated over a 6-month period in 2015. Now, unfortunately, it also seems that Twitter has taken the security of the personal data of its users in a rather cavalier manner. In fact, the former CEO, Jack, it's on record now, when he was warned several years ago that there's a possibility of data breaches, your security procedures and the kind of people who have access to this data are not vetted carefully enough. He simply said that, security officials tend to whine a lot. Twitter in particular, we know, has been critical in organizing and amplifying voices of dissent and protest movements across the world. And to see authoritarian, quasi-authoritarian, or in the case of India, democratically authoritarian states breaching that data should be cause of concern across the world.